Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I look at Pacific Dynagon football. And this is a set that was released in 1996, 1997, and then in 2001. And it followed the same path as Invincible, although it had its own quirk to it, but it also came from a very different place, where Invincible was kind of manufactured essentially out of thin air. Dynagon is actually the inheritor of Prism. So in 1993, Pacific created Prism as their high-end card set. This was intended not to compete with because everybody was creating it, but it was the opportunity that Pacific took advantage of alongside Finest, Flair in baseball, although we didn't have it over here, SP, and Select. So Prism was a part of that family, but it never really found its place. It just never quite made sense. And so after 3 years, Pacific didn't really have anywhere else to go with it. And so they decided that they needed to take that spot and use it for something else. Essentially, they needed to take Prism and just throw it in the trash and do something completely different. That said, they didn't entirely throw it away because they wanted to continue the tradition, so they called the new set Dynagon Prism. So it's actually the inheritor of Prism, which was not the case with Invincible. That was done entirely on its own. But Dynagon was not created as a Prism card per se, and yet in some ways it kind of was. So the card that they created in 1996 is a card covered in gold foil. Not completely, but it has a stippled, or not a stippled, but it has an etched football of gold foil. And then they have streaks that come off from there to gold foil text. But in the space in between, they have team colors that fade between one to the other, and then a really good shot of the player right in the middle of the card. And this is a card that truly is a card about the player. Everything behind is just a really wonderful, elegant team spirit card design that showcases the player. And that's kind of where it has a lot of it has some of the same spirit as Pacific Prism, is that this was approached in the same way. The players stuck right on in a similar way. It's just that now, instead of a holofoil background with nothing going on, they have a whole background behind that has a lot of interest and really does do a great job of getting you in the mood of whatever team the player happens to play for. And this was a card that was perfectly designed for parallels, which is why it's funny that they didn't make any, because, I mean, even in Invincible, they had a couple of parallels. They sort of had one for Dynagon in 1996, where they had a set called Tandems. And Tandems is where they have copper foil for all of the foil on the front, and then on the back, well, they have another card front, it just for a different player. So the 144 card set for 1996 Dynagon has a 72 card tandem set, which means every single player shows up on the front or the back of one of the 72 cards. And there's not a structure to it, so it's not a direct parallel, but it's an indirect parallel because if you collect a team or a player, you get the parallel for your card or your cards, and you don't worry about who's on the back. As a set collector, it gets a lot trickier. And this was something that Pacific didn't invent because Playoff had been doing this with Contenders for quite a few years. So it was kind of a natural idea that they adopted that just kind of fit for what they created here for 1996 Dynagon. But the fact that they didn't have any parallels, I mean, even in 1994 and 1995 Prism, at least they had the gold parallels. Here they didn't have that, so the tandem cards were carrying a lot of weight. So that means that you would definitely need to have a fair number of inserts to fill it out, only sadly, a lot of inserts is not the case. It's 2/3. Now, the first one is called Dynamic Duos, and this is a card where you have the player and you have part of a logo for the team, and then you have a mirror chrome finish on the back, which normally doesn't work well. This is one of the few cases where it does, because under that foil is kind of an explosion-like effect of color. And so the foil gives a bright flashiness to it that works really well. But you can tell from the logo that this is not the whole card, this is half of the card. There is also a corresponding card that goes along with this that has the other half of the logo, and it has a teammate of the player you started out with. So the two players work together to make one double-sized card. It's almost like a puzzle because these cards are spread out throughout the set. So you basically pull them together to create a whole. And then the other insert set they had is Knights of the NFL. And Knights of the NFL is a card that's actually kind of similar to something we'd seen in 1995. You've got some etched gold foil on the top and on the bottom and a player image kind of tucked in there. This is a card set that looks at players who were really doing distinguishing work in the NFL at this time. And yeah, unfortunately, there's not much else to say about it. This is a card that does absolutely nothing with all of the creativity that we had been seeing with Dynagon this far in the 1996 set. But I also said there were three insert sets. And the reason for that is because Pacific had started to create filler cards in all their packs. Now, this wasn't an invention in 1995 or 1996. It actually goes all the way back to 1994 in Prism, where they had helmet cards. In 1995, they had an extended helmet set. And so in 1996, they wanted to capture something that they were benefiting from, which was the fact that in 1992, there was a throwaway card that they added into their main set of not an up-and-coming player, but a player who happened to have two really good games while they were there shooting for the games, or for the team, a player by the name of Ben Coates. A couple years later, Ben Coates finally had a really successful season. And it kind of took everybody by storm, especially in the following season when he had not just a good season, but he had a great season. And people were starting to go, this guy is going to be one of the next great tight ends. Everybody rushed to find his rookie card, only to find he didn't have a draft pick rookie card, even though he was drafted in 1991. It was a bizarre concept. Nobody could wrap their heads around how in the world did that happen. I mean, he didn't even have that 1 year where companies started to notice and he gets like 2 or 3 cards. There was just one card from this company called Pacific that a lot of collectors had never even heard of. And so all of a sudden, the whole hobby was tracking down this one random rookie card of this one player and being introduced to Pacific. So as Pacific through the mid-90s was rising in popularity, they knew it was because they happened to have a card of a player nobody else cared about. So in 1996, for their Dynagon insert set, which was basically just filler cards, one card in every single pack, this is a set called Best Kept Secrets. A bunch of players who, in most cases, nobody really cared about, just another card for collectors to collect. And for team collectors, this was great because back in 1990 and 91, you had tons of cards. You had punters, you had offensive linemen. You could really collect a big portion of your team. By 1996, those cards were hard to come by. Nobody was doing 800 or 700 card sets, or even really 600 card sets. So having a throwaway card set with throwaway players just to kind of have them out there, who knows, maybe you get a Rod Smith or a Terrell Owens who down the road, this would be one of their rare rookie cards, or in the case of Rod Smith, a second-year card. And that was the reason that this card set was created and what it was meant to do. But that closes out 1996 Dynagon. I mean, there was basically nothing. Virtually no insert, or no parallels. There was, there was the tandems parallel, which is kind of that way. There were 2 serious insert sets, and then there was the filler cards. This was a card set that was seriously lacking, which is weird because in Invincible, yeah, they had the same number of inserts, but they were way ahead in terms of parallels. That's what Dynagon would have to pick up in 1997, and that's exactly what they did. So for the 1997 set, the design is an upgrade over the 1996 set where they have a little bit less gold foil, which allows more of the background color to dominate the card, which creates a really good dynamic and makes the card feel more grown up, more in the spirit of 1997 designs for Pacific. And the cards do once again have their tandem parallel, but in this case it's a blue foil with a hint of turquoise in it, just a little bit of green in the blue. And it's done in the same way, 72 card set, random players are front to back, there's no relationship between them. But I mean, that was probably the best thing of the 1996 set, so obviously you're going to have it in 97. But they did have parallels. And the parallels are where you take the gold foil and you replace it with, in the first case, silver. I mean, silver is such an obvious choice because you have gold foil. Why wouldn't you have silver as a counterpoint? And Pacific was very much starting to do this anyway. Well, you got gold and silver, so why not have bronze? But Pacific wisely didn't want to use bronze. They rather used copper, which is great because it has a really strong orange quality to the color. So that makes these cards look wonderful. But they had a third insert set, or third parallel set, which is their red foil. And the red foil cards, this is one of those cases where I look and I just wonder why in the world red foil wasn't used more, because wow, it's impressive. It really is a great color for a foil. And that was the set. So they didn't have anything more to talk about with Dynagon because, once again, they didn't really need to. Now at least you had the parallels to chase, so you had a lot more going on there. But, well, look, why not also expand out inserts? And they most definitely did that in 1997 as well. Now the first insert is really kind of out there. It's called Careers. And the Careers cards, this is a card that it's kind of a cross between the 96 and 97 proper designs, where it has a whole bunch of gold foil there's a little bit of a football, there's some text, there's some stuff going on. But the card itself isn't all that complex. It has a background color that's the same on every single card. Not a big set, just 10 cards. And yeah, that's about all there's to say about it, except this is a card set that has a parallel. Okay, not one, 3. And the parallels, the first parallel is a silver holofoil. So all the gold foil on the front now is silver holofoil. And I'm going to get into the rarity in a minute, but at any rate, they have the silver holofoil parallel. Why not do a gold holofoil parallel too? So they did that. Now, the gold holofoil parallel is difficult to see, not because it looks like the gold foil, but because it looks like the silver holofoil. You're just wondering if there's like something orange or yellow in the room when they're taking the picture. It can be kind of tricky to figure out if it's silver or gold, but at any rate, the two are distinct enough. But again, when you're looking at like on eBay, it's tough to tell. What's not tough to tell is the third parallel, which is the raspberry holofoil. And this card is one of the great distinct cards where you just don't see cards like this at all. Very, very impressive. Now, I did mention that I was going to talk about the rarity, and the rarity is a little tricky because officially all 3 of these parallels, there are only 30 copies of each one. I cannot verify that for a number of different reasons, mainly because I've been working on this video for over 2 years, and the big hang-up has been getting the gold holofoil card. There are lots of silver holofoil cards out there. They're not hard to come by. They're pricey, but not hard to come by. The raspberry holofoil cards are a lot harder to come by. You don't see them very often. I've only ever seen, in over 2 years, I've only ever seen one gold holofoil card. It's the one you're looking at right now. This is it. This is the only one I've come across. So I don't know if it is just as common, we just never see it, or if it really is more difficult. So I can't speak to that, but technically, or no, I shouldn't say technically, officially, they're all equally difficult to come by, which, look, let's face it, 30 copies of each, especially from this era, that's still pretty tough to come by. So, that's Careers. You have the main card and then you have 3 different parallels. Then they did a take on the dynamic duos, which was called Royal Connections. And for this case, they actually did more of a puzzle-like design. The quarterback is designed with a football design on the various things that they've got going on the card. And you might notice that the card number is numbered with an A. That's important because they have the counterpoint card, as you can imagine, which has the counter design, the die cutting in reverse on that card that fits together with the 2 sides. Well, that card is the B number. So you have the number A and then you have the number B. So instead of being like a puzzle, it's a half and half. And these were separated into retail and for hobby. So they actually came out of completely different packs. A lot more challenging to collect. And then the last insert set that they had was Player of the Week. And this is a card that uses some etched foil on the surface and some glossy images as well. But it's a very intricately crafted card that is not designed to have a bunch of spectral effects, but just have a really cool satiny finish on it. So even though the design is a little bit too busy, it's actually not bad. It's a pretty interesting card. And they did do pack fillers again, just like the Best Kept Secrets in 1996. For 97, they did NFL Regime. So here they weren't as interested in getting all of these players you'd never heard of. There was more of a balance to it. But again, if you're putting an extra card in, why not make it kind of interesting and its own set to pursue? So, unfortunately, 1997 Dynagon, as well as Invincible, neither one of these sets quite locked on with audiences, so there was no set in 1998. Only Dynagon didn't exactly disappear, because in 1998, for Pacific proper, they did have an insert set called Dynagon. And if you want to know more about this, definitely check out my video on 97-98 Pacific. But while you're at it, you might want to check out 99-2000, because in 1999 they did another Dynagon set as an insert in Prism, or in Pacific proper. And this was interesting. They did this in 1999 because Prism was brought back out and actually was made successful in 1999, and then in 2000 they still had a pretty good model for Prism. But Prism in 2001, once again, it started to slide away, and they had Pacific Atomic Prism, or Prism, I think it's Atomic Prism. And so they were moving away from Prism again, but it's ironic that they were shifting over to this Atomic thing, because in 2001, Dynagon and Invincible came back. Now the reason that they came back was because after 2000, the hobby was going through a major change where the things that worked in the 90s just no longer worked. And so they needed to really rethink the model literally from the ground up. And so they threw away most of what they had been doing. Pacific only kept Pacific Crown Collection, or whatever they wanted to call it at this time, and they kept on life support Crown Royale. Everything else got rebuilt, and so for throwing away the 4 sets that they had done, which included Revolution, which was kind of a Dynagon / Invincible carryover, as well as Aurora, Omega, and Paramount, they got rid of all 4 of those, and they started over with a number of brands, including Dynagon was brought back along with Invincible, but not in the form that we knew. They were using a brand that was known, but they repurposed it for its own function. And the cards in the 2001 Dynagon set have a holofoil back, almost like a Prism card, except here they have just kind of a spectral fan behind the player that is the interest of the card. A little bit of gold foil, yeah, that's about it. But they did have parallels, and the main parallel that they had is where the gold foil on the card is replaced by red, and these cards are all serial numbered out of 99. So they have serial numbering in virtually everything in the 2001 Dynagon release. And this is the main parallel. But they also like to do premiere date cards as well that carry over from the idea that Stadium Club had with First Day. So with this card, it's done the same way as the regular card. It's just they have a little gold box with a serial number out of 135. Only difference. But those 2 are the only parallels. Almost. Because this was the hobby release. But they also had a retail release where the cards did not have a holofoil back. They just have a white back. They still have the gold foil, but it's not as flashy. And these cards also have a parallel, which is their silver or silver holofoil cards, where the gold foil is replaced by silver holofoil. And these cards are all serial numbered out of 199, so obviously retail is a lot more common than the hobby. But that is for the veteran cards. And the big thing about the new millennium is it's all about rookies. And so for the 2001 Dynagon set, they have rookies that are, designed the same way as the regular cards. They just have a little rookie logo on them. Otherwise, they're the same. And yeah, except that's only for retail. Because over in hobby, all of the rookie cards, every single rookie card is autographed. And the autographed cards, they come in different tiers. So the really top players, each one of these cards, the regular holofoil back, you have the autograph with the logo, serial numbered out of 199. So these are quite rare. And then for the stars, not the superstars, but the stars in the draft, these players are all numbered out of 499. Everything else about the card design is exactly the same. And they don't have any parallels for any of these. So all of the rookies come only as one. And speaking of which, the main rookies that you run into are the basic players. These players are all numbered out of 699. And those three tiers are the tiers for the rookies. So every rookie has only one version in the hobby, only one of the autographs with whatever tier they're at. That's the rarity that the card has. Pretty basic. And then we move on to the inserts. So the first insert is Big Numbers. Big Numbers is a card that is die cut. It's a very, I'll just say, very simplistic jersey design on the card. These cards are all numbered out of 799 or basically out of 800, but 799. And yeah, that's what they've got for this set. They also have a set called Canton Bound. And Canton Bound, serial numbered out of 99. These are obviously young stars who are showing that they're really going to make a big impact on the hobby. And these cards all have copper foil in it, which works so well with the ye old timey wanted poster design theme for these cards. A really good combination the way the card is designed. Now they also brought back Dynagon, or they brought back Dynamic Duos. And Dynamic Duos was brought back not in the same form as the 1996 set. Here, this vertical card it has both players on it. There's nothing challenging about it. There's no puzzle to it. It's just saying, hey, here's your team and the two players to go along with it. And there are 1,499 of them, so they're not even rare. These are very, very common for inserts. Not so much, though, with the Freshman Phenoms, because the Freshman Phenoms cards, these are horizontal cards. They are looking at draft picks. Very, very nice cards looking at the draft picks. And, well, there are a fair number of them because there are 599 of them. So, yeah. And then they also did jersey cards, only they didn't. So in 2000, Pacific did jersey cards across the entire run of everything that they made. Every card company had its own approach to jersey cards. Well, in 2001, they threw that model into a blender. The difference between different releases with their jersey cards is wildly interesting, especially in this case because for Dynagon, they didn't even bother with jerseys. They have just pieces of football. Every single one of these cards is numbered out of 214, but these cards are so thick that they have to be not one per pack, but only per pack. That's got to be it. But these cards, like I said, they're very thick because when you got to plug a football, that's taking up some space. Then they have a set called Logo Optics. And Logo Optics is a set where they use a technique where you punch out little holes to create an image. In this case, it's a team helmet punched through the card. These are really cool because they have a neat effect when you have the light going through them. And the cards are numbered out of 499, so these are not exactly common cards. These are pretty tough ones to get. But this is the Pacific Dynagon take on this basic concept. Then they have Premier Players, and Premier Players is a bunch of rookie cards. These are vertically oriented. They're numbered out of 999, and yeah, that's about all there is to say about it. And the last insert set they did for 2001 Dynagon is Top of the Class. And Top of the Class is the upper tier rookies in the draft, and these cards are not serial numbered. They're the only inserts not serial numbered. All the other ones are serial numbered. And that brings 2001 Dynagon to a close. Now, unfortunately, Pacific really couldn't figure out this whole new millennium concept, and so both Dynagon and Invincible only got 1 year of coming back, and then they didn't make it into the scrappy mess that was 2002 for Pacific. So this was the end of the road. But Dynagon had a very interesting journey down that road. There's a lot of interesting pieces that go into it, and it's a lot of fun to really look and see all the things that were going on with this set, because the set had a lot of innovation and a lot of simplicity. And then all of a sudden this weird, where did that come from, 2001 set. But the 96 sets and 97 sets, I mean, those are really, really nice sets. But such a fascinating time. 96 and 97 is an amazing time in cards, and these are among the most interesting of all the sets. So I've already done Invincible. In fact, I did that over a year ago. So if you haven't seen that, definitely check that out. And I've done most of Pacific in the 90s at this point. There's not a lot left for me to do past Crown Royale. So if you're really curious about Pacific, you got to check all these out. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, definitely check that out. And yeah, thank you very much for watching.